I'm Matt Reynolds, and this is my podcast.
I can do the job, but running the business is quite difficult. What a lot of tradesmen lack, and I was probably one of them, is business skills.
I don't mind making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes.
Information is all around you in the minds of people that work beside you.
Welcome back to the Trench Talk podcast. I'm your host, Matt Reynolds, and today I spoke with Judy and Eriks Celmins of Engage4insights, a New Zealand-based research and innovation company which helps businesses better understand and engage with their audiences, including their customers and employees, in order to drive better business decisions and outcomes. The idea of these discussions, for those of you joining us for the first time, is to go into the trenches of achievement and talk not with people who are orchestrating from some lofty perspective, but to those high performers who are actually in the trenches honing their craft. That has included guests from the worlds of business, sport and entertainment. All of them are on the front lines doing amazing things. Judy is a born marketer who loves building relationships with people and understanding why they buy. She has spent her career experimenting with different techniques to engage with customers, learn more about their unmet needs and how to serve them better. Judy learned the more she could add value to her audience, the more engaged they became. Erik's background is in radio as a content director, so his job was to grab the audience's attention quickly and to keep them listening for as long as possible. In the radio business, listeners equal ad revenue, and Erik's figured out pretty quickly that engaging with your audience is the best way to get to know them, and the better you get to know them, the easier it is to keep them entertained. Together, they have formulated a methodology and system to help businesses collect and collate customer and employee insights to help drive better decision making and to fuel innovation. Their clients include the likes of NZME, New Zealand's premier integrated media company, which trades on the Australian Stock Exchange, Communications Fiji Limited and PNG FM. Their clients have also included Austereo, Nova Entertainment, Foxtel and companies in the UK, Europe and Southeast Asia. During our chat, we covered a lot, including why relationship marketing is so important, especially in uncertain times when customers are looking to do business with people they trust, like the current coronavirus pandemic we're all working our way through. We recorded this in April of 2020. Building an insight story and what that really means. Using research for better decision making. Why getting honest, direct feedback is important in some situations and how it can speed up decision making. The tech product Judy and Eriks have built, and as always, much more. You can find out more about Judy and Eriks at engage4insights.com. That's engage, the number 4, insights.com. If you enjoy Trench Talk, head to xrm.com.au/podcast and opt in for Trench Talk alerts. We'll make sure you're notified when every new episode of the show is released. Trench Talk is available everywhere good podcasts are served, so if you're feeling super nice and would like to support the show, please leave a review, comment, rating, or whatever your chosen podcast platform allows. Enjoy this chat with Judy and Eriks. Alrighty, Judy and Eriks, we're finally doing this. I actually checked yesterday. We started talking back in October last year. So a short 5 months later, we're finally in front of each other and, well, virtually anyway, and about to sit down and record, obviously. So it's been a little while coming, but right in the midst of this, and I think that probably the thing that really upset the whole thing really was this coronavirus, wasn't it? So you guys being in New Zealand, can you give us a bit of an overview of where you're at and where you sit in terms of coming out of what is now lockdown and the easing of those restrictions?
I have to say, the Aussies I get to talk to, most of them are pretty jealous about our PM, who is doing a seriously awesome job. We also now have our Director General of Health, go figure, who's a bit of a, nice looking but geeky sort of guy, is now a sex symbol in this country.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
Oh, he's a rock star.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I've heard repeatedly in the news that we're not going back to the way we used to be, so maybe this is the sex symbol of the future.
But I think certainly from a Kiwi's perspective, and I'm an Australian, by the way, living in New Zealand, but I feel what they're doing here is making you feel safe. And even though they have been much tighter on closing business. So fundamentally, unless you run a food, and even then some food businesses are not allowed to open unless they can prove that they can manage entry or delivery or whatever. So every business has been shut down, absolutely everything. So There's no, I mean, I was talking to friends in Australia, so, you know, you can still go to Bunnings, you can still go to Kmart, you can still do all of that, and apparently that's essential. So none of that happens here. We haven't left the house in a car, Eriks and I, now for 5 weeks. So that's the way it is. And we don't need to. We get our foods delivered. We stand at the end of the driveway once a week and say, hi, neighbours. And in fact, Anzac Day, which is, you know, not sure where that'll be when this goes to air, but we're all meeting for a dawn service on the street, and Eriks is even going to play trumpet. He's practicing.
Oh, there you go. So one of the great things about these podcasts is you always discover something you otherwise wouldn't know. So you're a trumpet player. We've got it early.
Yes. And I started when I was quite young. And honestly, it'll be a privilege tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. to play Last Post and the Valley as a community event. Because normally you get involved in these things through a band and the dawn services or the 11 a.m s, all of that sort of thing. Very different on both sides of the Tasman this year. And I think there'll be a tremendous community spirit from all accounts.
Now, I want to get into what you guys are doing with your business, but you work with a lot of other businesses. When you decided that this pandemic that we find ourselves, you know, hopefully in the latter part of feeling the effects of now, when was the first time that you thought, hang on a second, this is going to be something serious? Because you're talking to businesses and working with them. Was there a moment where you said, okay, this might be just a bit more than a week or two or a slight disruption?
I think for us personally, you know, and everybody deals with all of this differently, and there's so much misinformation in media as well at the time. And we were due, of course, to come to Melbourne and see you in March.
You were.
And, you know, I was going to be presenting, and we was literally going, the Victorian government doesn't think this is an issue, but the New Zealand government is saying, no, this is serious, guys. And we really didn't know what to do. In the end, we decided that even though at that stage the event organisers had decided it was going to go ahead, that we were just going to walk away from quite a significant investment that we had contributed to it. You know, we'd already paid for printing, which is still in Melbourne, and all of that sort of stuff, airfares, which we did not get a refund on at all, accommodation, they said no refunds, so we lost the lot. But it just felt to us the right thing to do. Actually, for community, I think what I love mostly, and Eriks touched on it, you know, when he's playing the trumpet tomorrow, but it's the sense of community that is the most exciting part about what's happening.
Yes.
And I think that's the opportunity that business people can get out of this, is that real connection with
not to
an audience.
underestimate that.
Yeah.
That really, because so much business naturally is seen as transactional, you know, because you're there to get revenue in and to make sales and so on. But what this has really, really brought out is that how relationships underpin those transactions and actually quite necessary. And now we're in a stage of what is safe, who do we trust, who can we rely on, have become really important. And for businesses to stay in touch with people. That, in fact, you know, what Judy has been doing in her work with local businesses in talking about your messaging is not just simply, oh, we're here. It's like, well, what are we doing? What are we doing behind the scenes to make life better when it all comes back again? How are you going? You know, do you have a great pasta recipe to share with us? Anything that's human is actually driving business now. I think that's going to be the big difference.
Yeah, because we can naturally, I suppose, when we're a little bit uncertain of where things are going, our natural instinct is just in a lot of ways to retract, right, and kind of just pull back and try and assess what's going on. For me, I do think there is a balance, because I heard it said the other day that you want to retract to a defendable position, which I think is in business is certainly important. But after that happens, then you really want to start to look at that layer underneath, right, and start to apply that positive mindset just to help things move forward again.
Yes, you've got to protect yourself, because all of us every single person on the planet is grieving for something at the moment, whether that's a lack of freedom or deeper than that, and you've lost your job or your business is, stuffed, or or loss of life
for a long time.
All those social connection, all of those sorts of things. So everyone is grieving. So that's the first thing to acknowledge, and allow yourself time to grieve and go, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to be pissed off at the world at the moment and go, I need some time. And I think, certainly here in New Zealand, because we're into week 5 of very severe lockdown. So I think the first 2 weeks was like that for everybody. We were just all shell-shocked. But now people are starting to go, okay, there's a life after this. There's a window. We actually have been given a date and what businesses will be allowed to open at that date, and then how long that, in fact, will go for. And then we've already been given a next level. So we actually have a very clear plan here, which does make it much simpler. But it makes it simpler for businesses. And I think what's critically important is coming out in research that we're getting, and which I shared yesterday in my other little chat locally, but is that it's critical that businesses develop that personal relationship, that they acknowledge to their customers that they're human, that they're just suffering as much as everybody else, and they understand what the situation is out there. And giving that realness is actually the first step to building. I really genuinely believe that relationship marketing, it's always been there, but it's going to be even stronger and more important. If you cannot connect with customers, if you just can't do that, then they're not going to trust you. And trust is going to be the most important issue moving forward, because we're just all feeling a little bit frightened about it. Like, can I safely go out? Can I go into a public space now? All of those issues are still in the back of your mind. Some research released, actually New Zealand and Australia based, was talking about something like, I have to remember the numbers now, but 30% of people feel that for the long term, they're not sure whether they're going to go into a public space with a lot of people.
It's a high number, isn't it, really?
That's huge. A third of the population doesn't know if they feel safe.
Well, you've had weeks of messaging that it's not safe.
Yeah.
So it's just been drummed in, and for good reason. And because we are creatures of habit, that's why this is all overwhelming for people, because our brains are rewiring as we're going along here. And the brain doesn't like that. That's why we all get tired and stressed through this time and have to be kind to each other, remembering that we are reworking ourselves. And so we're going to turn around again and go back the other way. That takes time. It uses up brain energy, it uses up emotional energy, all of those kind of things. So the businesses that will have the EQ to recognise that and just understand what their customers are thinking about and feeling are going to build that stronger relationship with people.
The messaging is just so important, right? And we've already seen, there's a few memes and that going around of maybe businesses that have had campaigns and that have been pre-booked and in the current times don't quite match the mood of the community, which of course can be detrimental to not only your revenue but your overall brand, which is so important. So do you want to give us a bit of an overview of what you do and how you do it?
Okay, the Innovate to Win catchphrase we use, which was born some time ago before all of this happened, was based on the premise that to keep moving forward as a business, and of course that's even more heightened now, that when you go into recovery and come out the other end, that thinking differently, doing things differently requires an understanding of your customers, not just when they last purchased or how often they did and so on. It's actually understanding what makes people tick. And again, this is even more important now. So our method is based on, firstly, talking to both your customers and your team, because that's also underestimated as well, that as part of creating something, your team who are on the front line talking to customers all the time, they're forming a impressions as well. So getting insights and what we call building an insight story, and we actually have a template for doing that. It's not quite once upon a time, but it's a little like that, in that it tells the story of what your customers and team are thinking, impressions of your business, what they would do if you weren't there. And that's another twist now that we're actually in, because you're not there. So what else are people are doing? That's a vital thing to find out. And so to take that, the insights gathering exploration stage, we call it, then taking that into the ideation stage. What do we do with this? So instead of the traditional way of just throwing ideas at the wall and hoping something will stick, like let's all sit around and dream up something, whatever you like, however wild it is. But if that's not based on what customers are thinking about and what they actually need, well, there's no point. You can have a whole workshop day full of ideas, but does that relate to the customer? And so a lot of time and money gets wasted that way. So we have methods, and simple methods, for taking those insights, turning them into ideation, generating what we call concept stories. So at that second stage, we actually have a little fun little tool for doing that. It can generate a whole bunch of ideas just at the click of a button based on those insights. So that concept story then carries through to the final stage, which is validation. Because again, with traditional ideation, it's fine to come up with this stuff, but what does the customer actually think about it? You have methods that are often used to, you ask people, well, what would you do in this situation? What if we did this? But people don't know what they will do in the future. And again, especially now. So now we're in an environment where government and world circumstances are creating chains of events that people won't know what they'll be doing. Absolutely. So it's making the validation part relatable to people. And we have techniques for getting it to the now, not the future.
So I've mostly in my career worked with small business, and even ran a pet shop of my own for a long time. So that was when we first got together, because we worked in radio together. And then I remember going for a job. We moved to Sydney together for the first time, in very early stages of a relationship. And I'm looking for a job in radio, and they said, but you're sleeping with the enemy. And in radio is extremely competitive, right? So they're like, he said to me, you'll probably sleep talk and you might tell him a big promotion we're having. And I, whatever. So,
is this because you're at competing networks or stations? Is that right?
Yeah, and I didn't want to work at the same station. We'd done that, and there was a time where you somewhat need a bit of slightly different life and not work 24/7. Although now we work 24/7. But so I went out and started a pet shop, and then I did a lot of business mentoring as well and helping people with marketing over the years. So what I've learnt from all of that is that, one, as small business people, we've got so much going on. There's so many different hats we're supposed to wear, and we're supposed to be an expert at all of these different things. And then someone says to you, and you need to think of something new and be creative and be innovative. You think, what the? Like, give me a break. I can't do all of that. So Eriks has just got this fabulous mind, and I'm the loud, noisy one, probably most people have already picked up on now. And Eriks is this fabulous creative thinker in a quiet, unassuming way. So I presented the problem, and he's really designed something, one, completely unique, where it's a full path. We've written a book that makes it incredibly simple. It's not a complicated, long textbook. It literally is step by step exactly what you do at this stage, with the desired outcome of creating something new. And to take that scary aspect of creativity that people think, I've heard so many times, I'm not creative, I'm just, whatever.
It's one of the most common things.
Yeah, people always say that, and it's so not true. And I think back to all the small businesses I've mentored over the years, and they present a problem, and all I do is pull apart the problem, and then they come up with their own solutions almost instantly. And I go, there you go, really creative, perfect. How do we make that happen? And it really is as simple as that. And the technique of involving customers and team, though, is where we stand out. And the technique that Eriks has developed based on his research and working with audiences globally for years is about understanding their deeper emotional needs. Because as he rightfully just said, people don't know what they want. You can't go to somebody and say, oh no, it really annoys me. I see this all the time. People, they dream up some idea, and I'll confess we've done this in the past, so we've made our mistakes. But you dream up something and then you ask somebody a hypothetical question. Say, if you had this, would you use it? Well, you know what? Most people are going, oh, yeah, that looks interesting. What the heck? Because there's no commitment. So most people aren't going to want to upset you. So there are different ways of asking it. So what I asked Eriks to do, and I'm really so delighted with it, he developed a thing called a topic builder.
So we're talking about trying to come up with understanding your customer and also your employee or team better.
Yep.
So I guess you can get to the heart of the problem, which then leads to innovation maybe in the right direction or effective innovation.
As Judy has mentioned, one of the early steps, the topic builder, which is a template of things to ask both your team and your customers. Now, quite a bit of this, for those who are familiar with the jobs to be done theories, which are very good because they go beyond the normal things that you ask people why they might use your business. And it goes below the surface of that. So we have a linkage to that theory. It goes beyond that as to what solutions you may use. If I'm not, if your business isn't there, what else would they do? What are you trying to achieve? What's your life context? Because in a lot of cases, the issue for people is not the product. They're not buying the product. They're not buying a bucket of features. The features are what come together and deliver what the person wants in the long run. There's the theory, a popular one in jobs to be done is the one about, if you buy a 1/4-inch drill, the drill is just a means towards the end of drilling a hole. You actually want the hole. And then if the hole is really to put in a picture book, so why do you want a picture book? Well, I want to make my home look better. Well, why do you want to make your room look better? Oh, so I can feel good and it's my place. You have to get to that final step to find out, well, what are they really looking for? Because you may have to adapt your business to suit that end goal rather than your list of product features.
So I should remember this. Next time I go to Bunnings or a tool shop, I can justify that saying that I'm just really trying to make myself feel good and I should be free to do that, right?
Totally.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, but it actually plays really well to what I think is a mindset change that's happening because of our current situation. And that is we are being more focused on, so the stats are, what are people purchasing online? Home improvement.
Yeah.
Huge sale at the moment, right?
Followed by Band-Aids and bandages.
Yeah. Whatever.
Right.
But the point being is that people want to make their lives, they're trying to find ways of making their life better. So, and again, it's that emotional connection. And if you can build that stronger emotional connection with customers now during this time, and we've experimented with this over years with market research and things. So in another past life, I ran a market research call centre. So I would have 40 casual guys, girls sitting on the phone, annoying the hell out of Australian people, ringing them at about dinner time and asking them some questions, right? So we started experimenting with the level of engagement. And I could tell, and I started to train my staff to be able to tell at what point did they drop out of the conversation? Did they stop being engaged? And we started changing the way we would do things. And that has also led into another part of what we do. And that is because you can't get to understand somebody just by sending out a survey. It's not even as simple as that. And so a lot of what we do is about engagement, making people feel better, want to participate. And again, this is such a golden opportunity we've been given by the universe to reach out to customers, to make them feel part of our family.
At the end of the day, most people running businesses want to grow in some capacity, right? Whether that be volume of revenue or maybe the price that they're charging, and may even be to, in some lifestyle situations, to maybe claw back some hours that they're spending. So what you're really saying is that if you understand your customer much better, you can deliver a much better service, right? So is that when a business typically comes to you, when they sort of realise that? Is that a fair call?
Taking away the fear of innovation is a big part of it. Up until several weeks back, most business could pretty much run on status quo. And yes, if things are going okay, you may not be willing to take that bigger risk. And so our job up to that stage was saying, okay, well, also think about your competitors. We use the Uber example quite a lot, and a lot of people use that. Why were they successful? It was because they came into a protected industry. If you had your taxi plate, you were protected. Who else was going to muscle in on your territory as such?
There's a big barrier to entry in terms of cost, right? I think it was maybe in Australia it approached maybe even over $500,000 for a license plate to put on your car to become a taxi. Yeah. So not everyone could just start tomorrow. You need significant investment. So sorry, Eriks, go on. Just wanted to put that in context.
No, exactly that. So in a lot of business sectors, there was a feeling that, look, I know my competitors, we know what each other is doing, and, we can pretty much push on. Whereas the D word, disruption, which gets tossed around a lot in business education, wasn't always tangible. And yes, for us, it's been an education process, and someone would typically more likely come to you if they feel a competitor.
Yeah. They're being disrupted, and so they panic and go, okay, now we need to do something about it. And I think fundamentally every single business on the planet has been disrupted in the last month.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, now is the time to think about how can I move and secure a future moving forward. And that's really where innovative thinking, not necessarily the outcome of innovation, but innovative thinking and a clear path to innovation, a clear path to knowing that you're going in the right direction, because that's challenging. Most small businesses don't embrace innovation because it's risky. It's seen as being risky. Most innovation fails, but it fails for so many reasons. So much innovation happens, at the pub on the back of a coaster, and they think, oh, that's a cool idea, I'm going to go and do that. And if they've got some spare time and a bit of energy and maybe a few bucks in the bank, they might go, oh, we're just going to do it. No, everyone loves that idea. But how do you commercialise it? Is it reaching to the emotional needs of those who are potentially going to buy it? That's often a missing point. And when you ask businesses why they don't talk to customers, often they don't know how. Yeah.
And that's why we have the insight story structure.
Yeah.
That if you structure that conversation with our method, even if you're just talking to a few customers casually, instead of asking them, oh, how's it going? What do you like about us? And you just getting some standard pat answers. What we provide is a guideline for having a good conversation. It's still a conversation. It's not something, you have to put on the lab coat and stand there with a clipboard with people, but it's a way of working, creating a story around them and your service. Okay, then talk through that and then start revealing some of those underlying motivations that we were talking about before.
And that's absolutely key. Because if you ask a small business now, almost everyone I speak to, and I say, "Do you talk to customers?" Yeah. They're in the business all the time, and they love me. They're happy. Whatever. Then one day they'll come to you and they might say to me, "Well, actually, I haven't seen that person for a while. They used to buy every week. Maybe they just don't 5, whatever it is, that turns out that they like them, but they don't want to leave you completely. They feel a bit guilty, but they're starting to purchase stuff from somewhere else as well. And then eventually they're just gone. And that's how it happens. This is why I got really excited from a marketing perspective when Eriks delivered this concept that he pulled together, this whole concept stories and insight stories, the whole thing, the package, because I could see it painted a picture and it made it so much clearer for me to understand that customer and see how I could, okay, so now I can see there's a hole here in their world and I could fill that in the hole. And even if that's a deviation, if that's a pivot I have to do in my business at this time, that's an opportunity that could grow my business. Let's explore that further. That's really where this comes to its best.
So can you talk through an example, and I'm happy to be a live one if you want to do it now, but an example of the steps that you actually go through. So you don't have to name names in terms of a company and maybe not even results, but just the actual what that means on a real practical day-to-day, I call you and then what happens?
Well, really, we'd start with asking both your team and customers a series of open-ended conversation topics about, yes, you would start with the positives. What do you like about us? Some simple things around, what could we do better? But then digging deeper into what are you trying to achieve when you use us? If we weren't there, what else would you do? Would you go to a competitor? Or what if the entire category disappeared? What would you do? Oh, I think I would do blah, 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 or I think I'd have to do this, and so on. And keep working along those lines to just gather that sort of information for starters, not making assumptions, because that's one of the big things we say. Well, okay, in conversation you're going to say, well, we always know this about our business, but is that an assumption? When did you last check that? And what about available desk research about your business? What are the trends? What are the big trends? Are there some global trends that you haven't looked at for a while? So pulling all those kind of things together, where the team can help, it's like saying, well, you might go to your team and say, tell me honestly, and it has to be honest, and it's not going to reflect on you, but what is the biggest obstacle to people using us, or what irritates them about our processes? Because that can be a very real thing. So you gather all of that for starters, and you start to build a picture, but there's got to be honesty in it. That's why just throwing a question or a casual conversation isn't good enough. By framing this and engaging with people and sitting down with them and going through these different aspects of your business and their life context, there are things to think about. And again, especially now, is, well, what are you most concerned about in life? And what feels like a good day to you? As a business, who should we be supporting in the community? Like, for instance, if we were to support a charity, what would that be? Because they all come together as a picture. Because when you put those into our insights template, if we say, fill in all the blanks in this insight story, okay, then we're ready to start generating some ideas. But that's the very crucial first start, is gathering those points.
And is that an interview? You come in and sit with the team, talk with my employees as an example. Do you get the phone numbers of my customers and call them, or do you stand in a shop if it's a shop situation and talk to them as they come in? What's the method for actually that communication exchange?
It can be any method that suits your business. And particularly now with contactless, any kind of online method. We have our own platform for doing that as well. But, using Zoom, having a chat with people, calling them up if necessary. And, setting it as a honest conversation, because that's got to be the framework for it for starters. Not necessarily a survey. Just touching on survey methodologies. You could do something in Google Docs and Google Forms and send out a thing, but that doesn't really capture the emotional quality of what you're after.
Because that's the key at this stage. We can get facts. Most businesses that are at this level, they know buyer history, they know the demographics of their audience predominantly. They will know, they'll know what suburb they live in, potentially their income range or whatever it is, right? So they have some ideas of the basic demographic profile. But what Eriks is talking about is getting more into a term called psychographic. So it's the deeper understanding on an emotional level of that customer and your team. So it's a completely different level. And it's when you get to that space with a person, you can understand their truer motivations around making that purchase or buying whatever service you are offering. The best advertising over the history is always based on an emotional reason for purchasing. If you think about next time you look at a good ad, work it out. Beer commercials are fabulous. So what is it about drinking a beer? It's not about the actual drink necessarily. It's being with mates at the pub, having a good time, telling a yarn, all of those sorts of things, watching your favourite game of footy, all of that sort of stuff is the emotion behind drinking a beer. So in order to make something that stands out in your consumer's world, you have to get to that level. And no survey, no one quick chat with a customer as they walk out the door, as they're about. And so this is the thing. It's what we do is we work with every individual business and go, yes, they can read the book and do it all themselves. That's totally fine. And, with the tools that we've developed, it's doable to do it on your own. But if you want to get a further insight, what we do is pull it apart and work with every business and understand what their particular customers and how they interact with customers and what's the best method for getting these emotional insights. That's why, at the beginning of this conversation, I said the relationship is critical. Because if you have that stronger relationship with somebody, then they're going to open up to you. You don't go on a blind date with a survey and sit there and get them to answer, now tell me, where do you work? Where do you live? How much do you earn? And how often do you go to the supermarket? Whatever.
Yes.
Clearly, that's a really short date. They're out of there.
Yeah.
Right? So you're warming this relationship up. And that's why I think this is such a great opportunity for anybody who wants to go further in business. If you've had enough, fine, that's great. And if you want to grow and you want to survive this next time in history, you have to build a relationship because that's what they want from you, for one. And two, it's the only way you can find out what they need you to provide them. So it's identifying that value that you provide them, what you as a business provide a value to your customer. And you just don't get that from casual, how you going, mates? Oh, yeah, no, great. You're happy with the service? Yeah, love it. Thanks very much. Great. Oh, no, they love us. Customers love us. Do you know anything about them? No. No.
And there are different creative exercises you can do around this, like ask people to write an ad for you or, let's say, a Facebook post talking about you, which gets them to think about it. And so you find out your strengths. It's a good way of finding that out and expressed in more emotional terms. Also taking problem solving to people. And one of the things that can work really well, and people, we're wired to solve problems. That's why people fill out puzzles, especially now, I'm sure, in lockdown, there's a lot of different puzzles and games being mastered. But to present, your customers with a dilemma you're having, be honest, say, I'm trying to decide between doing this or this, A or B. Which should I do and why? And people will respond. They'll get into it. And that's not exposing a weakness on your part. That's actually showing that you are actually human and you do care about people. And people will come up with solutions. We've seen examples of a fairly major company in Australia that was deciding on 2 types of coffee cups they were going to use. And so it was that kind of provider, whether there were two different designs and materials they were talking about. One was sustainable and one perhaps not so much. And apparently they had spent months wrangling this internally and still didn't come up with decisions. Well, they could have actually gone to their customers, and I have to say they didn't have a lot of customer feedback built into that particular enterprise, which they could have, because people would have told them, and they could be really direct. It's one thing that social media conditioning has really helped with this sort of exercise, and whatever kind of conversation you have with people, maybe on a private Facebook group, but people are conditioned now to be direct and honest. If they trust you and they're in a trusting environment, that social media post length, they'll tell you, and very directly and very honestly.
There's no doubt that some of these social media posts really strike that emotional chord, right? And that's why things go viral, because they really get to the heart of meaning for someone over something. And it may not be necessarily an overly positive thing. It can be, but not always. But you're hitting that emotional chord, right? And you're getting to the heart of the problem. Once you find it, you can make the most impact because you're dealing with the most significant problem in your customer's eyes.
Yeah. Very much so. Now, the proviso with that is best to take those conversations private. One thing with very public social media is the risks involved. And there's also a safety thing involved, now that we're on that particular subject, because, of course, Facebook's had its own issues over time as being the most used channel really generally by businesses, that people may not feel their information is safe. So I'd certainly say first thing is take those conversations private. And that also heightens the effect that if you invite people to a private group for starters, then they feel, okay, I can be a bit more honest and these things aren't going to go viral as such. And from a business point of view, look, you don't want your competitors, seeing all your dirty laundry either, if you can all help it. That is more challenging these days, but still, taking it one step into a more private environment is really good. But then, yes, people will open up, particularly when they feel secure.
Did we cover which coffee cup they actually went with? What was the problem?
They ended up going to the least sustainable because they wanted to be sustainable. Okay. But when you go down a sustainable road, and I've had a lot of adventures with sustainability, I've got an alter ego, it's very much the green, or I call it light brown actually. But, there are some methods of manufacture that use more energy. So it was a debate they were having internally that really could have been resolved. We've done this ourselves. One of our major radio clients, and they were debating for ages, arguing with the marketing department and the content team, and they were arguing about, which way we should go. And these meetings, they're expensive events when you've got, high-level people all sitting in meetings for hours and emails backwards and forwards. In the end, Eriks said, we're just going to run a session on our platform and we'll solve the problem. And the next morning, we had the answer. And it's fixed. There's your audience. It's told you exactly what you should do, and it solves all those problems.
So what is your platform? I know that we've spoken a little bit offline about this, Eriks, but it's almost like private chat.
Yeah, it's a private chat platform that, it's a combination of a focus group and Facebook, really. It's a love child of both of those things that gives you the feel of social media, but in a completely private environment.
Yeah, one of the reasons we did it was, again, the need to communicate with an audience, but it's the security and privacy thing that's huge. And the other thing that our other research was showing us is that whether we like it or not, we all have a preconceived idea by looking at somebody what they're going to be like. So if you see someone that has maybe slightly different eye shape or coloured skin, you're going to put them in a box, and it's no point in arguing because it's just the way our brains are worked. Now, what we wanted to do is, and one of the challenges with Facebook and any of those is when you use a profile picture, or mine was of a dog for ages. And so trying to cover myself up, I think. So you already decide that, okay, looking at my profile picture of a dog, clearly I'm a dog lover. And yes, but maybe that doesn't say everything about me, and maybe someone would treat me differently based on that. So we purposely got rid of all of those sort of biases, and we also make it fun. So that's a huge issue. People instantly respond differently, and there's neuroscience in this as well. So it's not all very categorized black and white, but we respond differently hormonally when we're happier, when we're having fun. We're instantly, if you go into an environment where you feel slightly unsure, it took me a long time. I'm still guarded with social media and what I write, and I really think about what I'm writing because I know it's there forever. Everybody knows that. So you just got this slight guardedness to it. So really the concept was to relieve people of that, to make it totally secure and free, to make them feel, we don't get any abuse issues. It's just a very comfortable, fun way of relaxing.
Use avatars instead.
Yeah, just funny little things like you'd almost get on a kids show.
So I'm picturing that there's a boardroom table of some description that everyone's debating over which coffee cup we're going to go with for various sustainability and probably profit reasons, but I'd assume would be a bit of a debate at that table. So what you're doing is you're taking that into a platform, into just, if we can imagine like a Facebook group as an example, you're pulling out the ties to individual profiles, I'm assuming, and then you can ask in that environment, what do you think? And then all you have to do is write, I think we go the sustainability option. I think that we don't. And then you can almost tally it up. Like, I know there's more involved than that example, but you don't have to sit at that table as a person and have everyone look at your face as you raise or don't raise your hand for particular votes. So that's sort of how you get to the core and the real answer, right?
Yeah, and it's a conversation because for many years, even as part of surveys, we've always used, and I love using those open-ended questions. So if you get the survey question that says, do you like this, yes or no, but then ask why, and you get the text box in an online survey, you get to fill in more of what you're saying. Now, you obviously end up with a lot of text, but you end up with a lot of richness as well in those. And yes, it's more time-consuming to do that, but again, to get beyond the yes or no, because a yes or no doesn't tell you very much at all. Yes, you need to know the why, and in marketing and business circles, we always talk about, well, let's go to the why, and that's really important. And yes, you end up with these transcripts of conversations, but once you sort through those, and it's so worth the effort. As I say, we've done this over I don't know how many projects we've done on that sort of basis, but you find gems, and you'll find people that articulate exactly what you've been debating internally, that someone who's not connected with your business, apart from the fact they're a VIP customer, will just say, well, I would have thought you just do blah, blah, blah. And oh, okay, there's the answer there. But people will come up with things. They'll give you insights into their life and how they see things, their language. We talk about how content marketing is so important, for instance. You just don't shout slogans at people now. You have to engage people with your content. Well, what language do I use? At what level? Do I talk the jargon of my business, or do I use the language that real people use? Well, how do you know that? And by doing these kind of exercises, having conversations, transcribing the conversations is worth the effort. And there are different tools around for doing that. But essentially, if you've asked it, again, going back to our insight story template, that with particular topics, you get some pretty direct answers that you can sort through pretty quickly. So, okay, that's the language they're using. Here's a word that they keep using. Okay, we'll be able to base a whole content campaign around that, because we know that's what they're talking about, rather than in our staff meeting the other day, we were talking blah, blah, blah about our business. And on the other hand, your customers in their normal life are saying this. Well, let's go to what the customers were talking about. So it's taking the steps to do that, and you'll be rewarded by doing that.
To add to that briefly, so we don't only look at customer insights, we talk to team members. And unfortunately, many of us employ team members and get them just to do their job, and that's fabulous. But they have an enormous number of insights that they can share from their perspective of dealing with either the front end of the customer or even in the system behind delivering the product. So there's several advantages to bringing in the team. Not only do you get their experience and knowledge, but you're also empowering them. You're making them feel more part of the business. And it'll be interesting to see what happens out of this, because clearly we now have massive unemployment and there'll be a few businesses that won't come back and maybe people will be looking for work. But before this, in New Zealand, we have major shortage of staff, skilled and unskilled here. Huge problems. And in America, it was the same issue. So, and I'm just not sure of the Australian stats, but the point was that if you get someone that's really valuable in your team, you want to keep them. So you want to actually get them contributing to the success of your business. They actually want to help you. They've got great ideas and insights. But as another advantage to this, what Eriks has developed is a system of taking the insights from team and blending them, trying to fit them together, like, Rubik's Cube, trying to fit them together with consumer insights. So you're going, oh, so we think this, consumer thinks this, they don't come together. So you're instantly identifying an opportunity or an issue in-house, those sorts of things. That's the key to a lot of what this does.
There's an opportunity gap, because to peg this back to what are we trying to achieve from this, a lot of it is about finding opportunities to grow, as you said before, Matt. You're certainly not sitting still. Yes, we're going to go through a business recovery stage and reclaiming, but also to keep going and growing as well. And that's about opportunities and seeing the opportunities. Okay, what's within our capability to fulfill that opportunity, or do we partner up? So I think one of the things that certainly come out of all of this, we'll see more business alliances, even working with a competitor, but coming together to come up with a solution for people, that you work creatively on whatever that gap that you found and coming up with a way to address that.
So one of the key things as a business owner, right, is to remove our own bias in a lot of these situations, because you run your own business, I do too, and we can find ourselves pretty quickly in a place where once we have a reasonably large team and that we're only dealing with problems all day and every day, right? Because that's the joy of being a business owner. So you get 2 or 3 problems that come up from customers for various reasons, legitimate or not, and you're focused on those. And very quickly you can get in this spot where you're like, my customers, they're all idiots, they're all stupid, they don't understand, all that sort of thing, right? Whereas, hang on a second, you've got thousands of customers. You've just had 2 that are an issue, and you can start to think differently about the way that you do things, right? So you need to bring in those outside perspectives and really, I suppose, document them and put them in the right place so you can address what the real issue is. And I guess the second thing from that is that after you overcome your own bias, if you get buy-in from your team members, then they take on responsibility, which means they become more productive. And in a lot of cases, you can actually have customers, which we've seen some famous examples of buying into your company as well, right? And I don't mean financially, but being promoters of the product. And
yep.
You've got the Apples and the Nikes of the world. We carry our MacBooks and we wear our swoosh logos because it says something about us. We're out there promoting for that business, even though we don't get, we actually pay for the privilege of of doing that,
Yes.
right? So it's very important. I know I said all the time with business owners and being guilty of it myself, where you just lose exactly what's going on because you can get caught up in the minutiae of one or two things. And another example would be obviously an employee issue that we all deal with from time to time, right? For whatever reason. It might not even be work-related or stem from the work environment, but you can't let that issue, if you like, in quotation marks, change the way that you should be dealing with your overall company and all of your other employees, because it's just going to be detrimental to your growth, right?
Yeah. And that is really the biggest challenge, I think, in small businesses, separating and finding the time to get beyond that stuff that you have to deal with. Yeah.
Well, this is what we're really, in terms of our method, is laying it out. So whatever time or budget you have, they are stepping stones. And so, okay, I'm at this stage. What could I be doing here? And what could I be talking to my customers about? Or, yes, I've got this information. Let's try and turn them into ideas. So there are templates for working through that. And there's some we've used. One of them is the Dublin 10 types of innovation template, which is they're a Deloitte company, and we've quoted them, and thanks to them. But really interesting perspective on your innovation is not just about the product. They list out a whole bunch of ways that you could be innovating that you may not be thinking about, maybe innovating in your marketing. Everything else may be right, or goes back to your business model. Okay, that's going to be very fundamental. But as I mentioned before, are there people you could be partnering with? Have you thought about this? If there's an opportunity out there, what are the different ways to address that? It's not just about adding another feature and complicating your business process or having to clutter up your messaging saying, and now we've got extra blah or whatever, and here's our laundry list of things we do. Go back to the jobs to be done. They don't care about your laundry list. They actually care about what I'm trying to achieve. And so approaching that from different angles. So to help that person who is feeling snowed under, just to look through all of this is what we've tried to do, so you can have a think about it at any point of the process.
So I want to sort of start to bring this to a little bit of a close, because I want to be respectful of your time. I know that you've got things to move on to, and as do I. It's a busy Friday is always a busy day of the week, right? So can we just spend maybe a couple of minutes on where the big opportunities are moving forward? Is it just simply that if we can understand where our customers are at this time, then we can help them the most, and our team members are included with that as well, right? So is that right, or is there an area that we can focus on coming out of this time?
I don't think there's one area, and I don't think we know yet either. One of the words I want to debunk is this new world that we're in. I can't stand that statement. It's just bugging the hell out of me. We don't know what this new world is like. This new world is still evolving.
And we'll be for some time.
Yeah, we might be a year before we find out what the world's going to be like. So where the opportunities lie depend on you as a business, where you're placed, what headspace you're in, what resources you have access to, what industry you're in. I mean, clearly distribution is one key big thing, how you can get your service out there. And that's the big thing, again, is New Zealand now goes into lockdown level 3. So alert 3 means that we can finally have takeaways. So we're not allowed to go near. Restaurants have just been closed completely.
Yeah, wow.
But you're still not allowed to pass something to somebody here. So this is the next thing that they're literally working on right now. And so the point is that it's evolving, and you have to have that flexibility in your business and structure to be able to fit where the opportunities present. But you have to know the opportunities. You have to understand the audience first and keep in touch with them. Build that strong relationship. That's the big takeaway for me out of all of this. Build that strong relationship. Know what they want. Know what value you are providing to them, and how can you pivot? What opportunities are being presented from the world that maybe next week is different again, and the week after that. And strategy is always critical. You know, I'm a big strategizer and look at longer term goals, but in some ways I think, again, that's got to be really flexible during this time. I don't think you can even say, well, this time next year I'll be, no, I don't know, because none of us know. We are, to use a bit of a cliched term at the moment, in completely uncharted waters. There's no point in looking back at how people in the Great Depression handled it and even the GFC. It's not remotely the same. And again, every single one of us are going through a level of grief. And so as a business, having that empathy, understanding what the changing needs are and evolving with it, I think that's the opportunity. Those that put their head in the sand and go, oh, look, it's just going to go back to normal. People will be out of lockdown and they're just going to want to buy whatever I sell. Sorry, I personally believe that is not going to wash it. We've changed. Our brains have been rewired. Our whole psychology has changed. And if we don't, as a business, fit that new model, then I think that's the white elephant. They're the ones who are just not going to make it.
And your business moving forward, although we don't know exactly where we're heading, do you have a conceptual plan for the next 5 to 10 year period? Is it continue to grow? Is it to work with different companies? Where do you see yourself pushing into?
Certainly for us, I love the continuation of evolving with it all, and yes, definitely growing. I'm absolutely. I guess my personal goal, and I think I'm right for speaking for Eriks, is that we want to make innovation a part of every business.
So it's not just a buzz term.
Yeah.
It's about creative problem solving. And that's just what we love doing. It's what we've always done. Yes, when you're in your own business, and we do the same thing. You know, we're all the same. It's a lot easier for someone just sitting on the outside and someone you trust to say, why don't you do this? Why haven't you thought of doing that? And working on that kind of basis and really taking our philosophies out there. And we just want to see people use good methods of doing this and maintaining good relationships and getting good insights from people, having good conversations, because that will really be so helpful to so many businesses, I think.
That's our happy.
Yes.
Oh, very good. And bringing obviously a system in terms of a book and your website and that sort of stuff makes it accessible for small businesses too, right? Because large companies have been doing a lot of the things that we've been speaking about forever and ever and ever, because they've got teams and people on it and they've got the resources and the ability to do it. But for small businesses, it is a lot harder because we just don't have the resources, right? It really comes down to the business owner in a lot of cases. So that system is great for that reason. Now, a question I do ask everyone, if you can have one law changed, what would it be?
There's been a business rule or law, and I think it was the great Drucker came up with it, but you can't manage it if you don't measure it. Well, that's fine up to a point, but when you're talking about relationships, creativity, innovation, all those kind of grey area things which you can't necessarily measure. And I think it's been a real shame that a lot of people have used that as an excuse not to think a bit differently and think a bit creatively. Oh, if we can't measure that, if it's not a KPI, then we can't do anything with it. Well, KPIs keep you in the status quo. It's like surveys. Most research survey activity is very good at saying what's working and all the reasons for staying where you are. Let's keep the status quo is what a lot of that's all about. I would break that rule for starters, and have been actively trying to do for many years, actually.
If you're in business, you must change it. Every 6 months, you got to do something.
Exactly. Yes, KPIs and metrics, you absolutely need to measure some things. Yeah, totally. But there's another side of it, and the point of our conversation today is about, when you're talking about emotional drivers and people's end aspirations, those kind of things, the language they use, that's not measuring as such. That's engaging with people and extracting the value from that engagement and conversation. But it's not going to come out as a metric.
It's also a decision that you make as a business leader. So when I was running the team of research people, I would say to them, we'd bring in something new and we'd test it, and if it worked and whatever, and it bed it in. And then I'd go, okay, that's working. What next? What else could we change? And everyone said, well, it's all working really well. Yeah, but how can we do it better? And it doesn't matter if it's working well. How can we do it even better? And I think there's a mindset in a leader and a business operator. It's great to be able to challenge that thinking all the time.
Do you want to give out your website, how to contact you, anything you want to add and then we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, look, we're about to launch our book on Amazon, and we're going to put out a special. I think we're going to try and get it out there for 99 cents. So
It's the
Kindle version of our
very
book.
Good.
We want to do that really as a gift to businesses at this time so that they can get out there and start embracing some of this stuff. So I'll make sure there's a link on our website, which will be Engage4insights. So it's the word engage with a letter 4, insights.com. Easy.
Perfect. So you can go there and find out, well, everything's going to come from that. You're going to have it all in the one place, right? So perfect. All right, guys, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. And I look forward to watching and seeing your journey going forward and seeing what, in terms of innovation, that you help companies through, because I agree with what you're saying, that you need to be innovating or you may not be around to do anything. So I'm with you on that way of thinking 100%. So thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Matt, for the opportunity.
Hey everybody, it's Matt again. Thanks for listening. Just a couple of things before you guys clock off. You can get all Trench Talk episodes at xrm.com.au/podcast. You can also sign up for other goodies at the same site. Just plonk your email in there and you are covered. That's X for X-ray, R for Romeo, M for Mike.com.au/podcast. If you really like what I'm bringing you, please head to iTunes, subscribe to this show and leave a review right there. And lastly, if you want to contact me directly, type the @ symbol followed by Mr. Matt Reynolds into your search bar and you'll find all the social links. Goodbye.